As a result of the work that you performed, did you form any opinions with respect to Ms. Heard?
I did.
What were those opinions?
The results of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. When we have a personality disorder, there are going to be disturbances in several different areas that are visible in almost all different facets of their life. The first was actually my own behavioral observations of her based on her self-report. So one of the hallmark characteristics of histrionic personality disorder is sort of a overly dramatic presentation. We call this impressionistic speech. So it tends to be very flowery. It uses a lot of descriptive words like magical, wonderful, and it can go on for quite some time, and yet it really lacks any substance. So at the end, you're left wondering what was just said or what the answer is to the actual question. So that occurred a number of times, and it also represented the quick shifts you'll see between emotions. So she would suddenly be one way, and then she would become very animated or very sad. And when people are displaying these emotions with this personality disorder, there's a sense of shallowness to it. People who are observing them will feel like it's almost play acting, and they might not be able to put their finger on it, but part of it is because of the rapidness with which the person can switch emotions, and also the lack of substance. They don't really refer to, I feel this way. They might describe emotions, they might describe events, but very rarely, and Ms. Heard did not say, I feel vulnerable. She never really indicated a vulnerable feeling of her own.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't breathe. Please. I don't know. Please, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
People have a lot of incentive to present themselves in a way that's going to benefit their case. And they may want to look like they're sicker than they really are. They may want to look much healthier than they really are. And some of those incentives, they may not even realize that they're intending to do that. So it can be conscious or unconscious, but you really need to have a test that can check for that. And the MMPI-2 has a set of validity scales, we call them. These are scales that measure really the truthfulness and accuracy with which a person is approaching the test. And these scales on this particular test have been so well researched over many decades that they've become very nuanced, and they can tell us a lot about if somebody's, for instance, exaggerating. Are they elevating one of the scales that shows that they're exaggerating on purpose? Are they exaggerating in a manner that's more like a cry for help? Are they exaggerating in a manner that's clever and sophisticated or more obvious? And then the same exact thing goes for trying to minimize symptoms. We have a number of scales that can show us all the different, if somebody's trying to say they're the most wonderful person on earth, or if they're just trying to deny problems, and if they're doing that again in a very clever way or more of an obvious way. So that test was my choice for this case.
And we get in an argument, and I shove past him, just stomp off. And he grabs me, and we have an argument about me walking away, and am I walking out of this? And in my head, I was like, I actually wasn't thinking of leaving yet, but that would later be going through my mind. We had a brief interaction, and I don't remember the exact sequence of things. I wish I did. I have a lot of flashes. It gets a little bit more confusing from my ability to recall everything in a linear way a little later on as things got crazier. But for this part, the first night, what I distinctly remember is at one point, I don't think I had gotten very far, or maybe I came back into the room, but when he shoved me, I went flying across these parakeet floors. I mean, just skidding across these floors. And I remember thinking it just looked so easy for him to throw me around like that, you know. I just slid, screeching my skin against this like beautiful wooden floor. And we had another argument that was a spin-off from that. It was just kind of this on-off sort of thing that I remember eventually in this interaction, he shoves me up against the fridge. He has me by the throat, and he just was holding me there by my throat. And I wondered if it was the drugs. I wondered if it was him. It hadn't, in my recollection, hadn't been that long. He has me up against the throat. He's kind of bashing me against the wall next to the fridge. We're kind of moving in that area. And at some point, I'm in his face. And I don't know if he had let go of my neck or loosened my grip, but I remember slapping him across the face.
What did you learn about Ms. Hurd from the results of the MMPI-2?
Quite a bit. I wrote up a 25-page interpretation outline. It has numerous scales. So one of the reasons I like this measure so much is that it can tell you so much about multiple different traits and tendencies and mental issues. One of the primary things I learned was that she had a very sophisticated way of minimizing any personal problems. I also learned that she tends to, there were a number of characteristics that were consistent with the eventual diagnoses, but some of the primary characteristics, and I'm going to try to condense 25 pages here, were essentially externalization of blame, tending to have a lot of inner hostility that is attempted to be controlled, a tendency to be very self-righteous, but to also deny that self-righteousness and to judge others critically against these sort of high standards for moral value, but also to deny doing that, essentially to claim that one is very non-judgmental and accepting and yet very full of rage, really. And these aren't facts, but her scores essentially correlated, so they were consistent with other people who obtained these scores who have been shown through many studies to have these very specific traits. So externalization of blame, a lot of inner anger and hostility, sometimes that anger among these groups with similar scores, these people might have that anger kind of explode out at times. They tend to be very passive aggressive. They may be self-indulgent, very self-centered. They could use manipulation tactics to try to get their needs met, very needy of attention, acceptance, approval. They tend to distance people who are close to them. Initially, they may seem very charming. They're very socially sophisticated, actually. That was a major component on there. They have a capacity to kind of offer some of their faults, but in a way, but only the ones that people think of lightly and can all relate to. And so they can present as very fair and balanced, but in actuality, they really might be very judgmental of others and unaware of problems in their behavior and their thinking.
Screaming at him, screaming at me. I got my hand free when he tried to grab me when I walked off. I stormed off. I slammed the door upstairs. I don't know if it was in that instance or if it was in a later one that I eventually barricaded the door. it wouldn't stop him from coming in. He could come in the other doors. There's there's a back door, there's a patio, but at least I'd hear it. And this is March 2015 by this time. I'm being medicated by his doctor. He's giving me anti-anxiety meds, giving me, had already tried to give me antidepressants. They didn't work for obvious reasons, I hope. I wasn't sleeping. I had insomnia. I'd wake up with panic attacks. I needed to sleep, but my ability to do so was really, really compromised at this point. And I kept thinking that I just wanted to hear him or know if he came in so I could be aware, so I could be ready for what was going to come in with him. And at some point I go back downstairs. I don't really know at what point I gave up and stayed behind my barricaded door, but I managed to go to sleep. I took some sleeping pills. I woke up, and when I came downstairs, he was still up. He confirmed when I asked him that he had not slept. He had not eaten, so I tried to get him to eat. We get in an argument. He was accusing me of Eddie Redmayne. And by this point, he thought I was working with Billy Bob Thornton on the movie I had just shot, but I had already worked with him a year earlier. But he was very upset about him and the gentleman that invited me to a concert in London. My co-star, he was upset about these people, even though I had done that movie a year prior.
Who was...